3 years ago, before Twitter changed hands, before the global pandemic, there was a car company with a greater market cap than General Motors, Ford, and a few others combined, despite producing orders of magnitude fewer vehicles. A company led by a visionary CEO building cars that would someday drive on their own while producing no emissions whatsoever. It would go on to gain over $1 trillion in value at its peak during the pandemic. Of course, I'm talking about Tesla. And to understand what's happening right now, we have to take a look at how it became to be so highly valued in the first place. Tesla Motors was founded in 2003 by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning, with the goal of building electric vehicles Silicon Valley style. Less than a year later, they would go through Series A funding, which included a $6.5 million investment by Elon Musk, who would later go on to name himself a co-founder while taking on an active role in the company. The facts are that when I requested through AC Propulsion to meet Eberhard, he had no technology of his own, he did not have a prototype car, and he owned no intellectual property relating to electric cars. All he had was a business plan to commercialize the AC Propulsion T0 electric sports car concept. 3 years later, when Eberhard was asked to leave Tesla, most of the work that he had been paid to do had to be redone. Fair enough, even with the dispute between Eberhard and Elon Musk calling into question his role early on as a co-founder and whatnot, it's easy to recognize that he did an awful lot to build the company into what it is today, raising money, building awareness, creating the brand as a futuristic company, and of course, importantly, making the promise that it will one day return a profit if it can just scale up a bit. The public was already primed for this model by another company that was already doing very well. Amazon. Amazon, of course, was known to have operated at a loss for many years before Jeff Bezos flipped the switch to turn on the money printer. And so Elon was able to keep raising money for Tesla until it was actually able to scale up a bit by building a Gigafactory or two. In 2014, Tesla started building their cars with the hardware required for what they then called Autopilot. The phrasing here is intentional. We know that it didn't actually let you sleep at the wheel, and Tesla has always maintained this as well, at the very least for legal purposes. However, we do have to recognize that the term autopilot does imply a level of functionality greater to the casual observer than what the cars were actually capable of. Over the years, the company would go on to produce more and more advanced hardware and software with increasingly sophisticated approaches, with current iterations using neural networks to attempt self-driving. We develop and deploy autonomy at scale in vehicles, robots, and more. We believe that an approach based on advanced AI for vision and planning, supported by efficient use of inference hardware, is the only way to achieve a general solution for full self-driving and beyond. Indeed, given the unpredictable nature of driving between any two locations and the requirement for any driver to adapt and improvise in response to living and non-living objects on the road, this seems like the best way to implement a general solution for an actual autopilot in cars. So up to this point, we haven't actually talked about any of the cracks in the Tesla reality distortion field, and this is because Tesla actually did manage to take its stock to insane heights, even with Elon Musk causing it to double and half in value every now and then, depending on the flavor of his tweets. They built the factories and the cars and the batteries. They are the first successful electric car company. Their cars are futuristic and have inspired other companies to follow suit in investing in electric vehicles. Consumers and institutional investors alike have bought into the dream that Tesla was selling, a future with emissionless cars that will someday drive themselves. But the problems they encountered along the way should have been seen as a warning for what was to come. The Model 3 build quality has always had a reputation of not being quite where it needs to be, with people talking about misaligned panels, poor finish, and so on. In fact, if you Google Model 3 build quality, the first result you get is this. It's still very much hit and miss in late 2022 as it was in late 2017, early 2018. Go in assuming the worst, hope for the best. Don't let the halo status or new car experience blind you, and you will be fine. If you're okay with 20 to 30,000 car quality, with another 20,000 in batteries and some already aging tech, and can turn a blind eye to some fit finish, build, paint, quality issues, the whole package is still fairly enticing. I get wanting an electric car, but I don't think it's worth rolling the dice on a Model 3. This was originally billed as Tesla's affordable electric car that they aimed for having a price tag of around $35,000, but today the picture is very different, with the base configuration being close to $50,000, and that's without the $15,000 full self-driving package. That's a $65,000 gamble that you're making on a car that might not have everything aligned properly. But speaking of full self-driving, apart from a small collection of people posting videos on YouTube where their Tesla is, accidentally driving into things, or wanting to do so at least, there is that persistent story on the internet where the full self-driving functionality will shut off a second or two before any collision occurs. Without wanting to put on a tinfoil hat here, it is subject to an investigation by the NHTSA. Absent of any proof that Tesla hoped its autopilot shutoffs, which by the way aren't claimed to have occurred in every crash under investigation, would let it claim, however incredulously, that the crashes were the driver's faults because they were in control for the hummingbird wing flap of an instance just before impact. There's no there, just speculation, and since Tesla has no public relations team or other way of answering journalists' questions other than tweeting at Elon Musk, we won't know for sure until NHTSA gets to the bottom of things in its investigation, which has since expanded to include systems on over 2014 to 2022 model year 800,000 Model S, Model 3, Model Y, and Model X vehicles. NHTSA says it will now report its investigation's findings on a monthly basis going forward, so we should find out more soon. Okay, fair enough. We don't know conclusively if Tesla is at fault here, but together with the requirement of having to have a passing driver safety score to get into the FSD beta, it's clear that full self-driving still has a long way to go before you can, go on a night on the town carefree and rely on your Tesla to drive you home while you take a nap. The original promise was to have self-driving vehicles by 2018, 5 years ago. In December 2020, Tesla joined the S&P 500, exposing it to the ups and downs of a much larger sum of money. During the pandemic, it gained an additional $1 trillion in market value, putting it at around $1.2 trillion total market cap, a valuation it has not come close to since. Of course, this was the time when the stock market was beginning to tumble anyway, with news of inflation and impending recession began dominating news cycles anyway. This ultimately led to the S&P 500 tumbling around 25% from its peak. While this is seen as pretty bad, it pales in comparison to Tesla, which has lost around 75%. However, the majority of this slide happens to coincide with when the then richest man on the planet decided to go shopping for another company to buy. Of course, I'm talking about Elon Musk buying Twitter. Specifically, how this was executed. Elon Musk had a net worth of over $200 billion. However, this does not mean he had that much in cash. In fact, most of his wealth was locked up in shares of Tesla. So when he decides to go buy Twitter for $44 billion, he has to finance that somehow. While he did manage to lure some external investors into joining his pot of money to buy Twitter, we do know that he sold at least $15 billion worth of Tesla shares, and we do know that he took out a $13 billion loan using additional Tesla shares as collateral. If running Twitter under his own bank account ends up costing Elon too much money, he may be forced to sell more of his Tesla shares to finance the loan, driving down Tesla stock even further. In addition to this financial risk, Elon's reputation as a genius CEO that can do no wrong has absolutely plummeted as a result of his turbulent handling of Twitter. This, combined with a seeming abandonment of his duties as CEO of Tesla, has people looking at Tesla like a headless chicken that lays electric vehicles of questionable quality. However, unlike Twitter, I don't think Tesla is going anywhere. They are a profitable company. It's just that we're seeing its valuation realign with, reality. The idea that it should be a multi-trillion-dollar company just because it builds electric cars that may someday drive themselves is now sort of dead. They're not going to dominate the market that they pioneered. Yes, they still have over 50% of the US EV market, but this is decreasing each year, and they have competition that is heavily invested and motivated in catching up. Yes, the Tesla Roadster looks amazing, but we are in the decade where every supercar and hypercar maker is also looking into going fully electric at some point. And finally, Tesla has a shrinking backlog, which is going to hit their already low volume compared to other car companies. Many people bought Teslas in order to support a green future, but with Elon Musk turning his back on progressives, there's this sort of air of buying a Tesla corresponding to supporting and sponsoring whatever Elon is doing. His inseparability from the Tesla brand was once seen as a strength given his other projects like SpaceX and investments in solar technology. Buying a Tesla meant buying into a better future. Today, however, there is a duality that every activist buyer has to consider. Is the environmental benefit of buying a Tesla greater than the societal carnage being sponsored by the same purchase? And even if you don't care about any of that stuff, you still have to worry about the quality and safety issues, especially given how expensive those cars are. So what's actually going to happen? Is Tesla going to go out of business? Probably not. Their products are solid enough to be a starting point for a more mature company. In the meantime, the stock price is probably going to stabilize at a point more in line with other car companies in terms of deliveries over market cap. The board of directors has the option to oust Musk, which would end the era of broad strokes that we've seen thus far. They can bring in somebody who can let the company focus on maturing its products and processes while also separating Elon Musk from the Tesla name to repair any sort of perceived branding issues. Alternatively, they can roll the dice and wait out the storm that's going on over at Twitter so that they can await the return of their now somewhat disgraced CEO, who can then hopefully maybe return the stock price to the moon where it was before. That's it for this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Happy New Year, and of course, thank you for watching.